thing that made me like fall in love with the dude was, I mean, he's funny, but instantly like, okay, my family's Coptic, Coptic Christian, Egypt, but like so much is similar.
Very similar.
So much,
Yeah.
you know?
My father's best friend, I grew up in Kuwait, actually. I'm Iranian, but I was born in Kuwait. And my father's best friend in Kuwait growing up was Egyptian. And Egyptians are just so full of life and just very beautiful people, great souls, just good people. I just remember being around a lot of Egyptians growing up and everything.
It's funny because people in the Middle East have so much more in common than they have separate. But they still like forget about Israel. I mean, even like when my dad was older and they had Arab American like access cable channel, so if it would be on, be like, Dad, look, we watch Arab movie, and he'd be like, son of a bitch, Yemen cannot understand one word they're saying.
Yeah, the dialects are.
Dad, they're speaking fucking Arabic, you know?
Yeah, the dialects are wildly different. Like if you're like from the Khaliji countries, like the Gulf countries, and then you speak to somebody from like Libya or like Iraq or like Lebanon, Egypt, vastly different dialects. Very different. Yeah. Did your dad grow up? I know you grew up in New York.
I grew up in New York, yeah, but my dad lived in Egypt till he was like in his early 40s.
Ah,
yeah,
amazing.
He met my mother there, and when he came, when they got married there, and they wanted to come to America, but Nasser was in power, and they weren't letting Christians out of the country, so we could have ended up just being in Egypt, but someone in his family bribed somebody with like a case of scotch and something, and he got out, and that's how that happened.
Amazing. So, what year was it that they came to?
They were married. When was Kennedy was assassinated in 63, right?
Yep.
Okay, so when Kennedy was assassinated, they were married, but my mother was in America and he was there. So they were still trying to work it out. And then she was going to go there and move, and then he was like, something happened, I'm coming here. So
amazing. And you grew up, I think, from what I read, on the Upper West Side?
Upper West Side, yeah.
Nice. And did you spend some time in the Bronx? Or
Has it started?
We're just going. Yeah.
Cool.
And did you spend some time in the Bronx in that area, or did you go to school around there?
I did. I grew up on the Upper West, but I went to kindergarten and grammar school, 1st to 8th, in Harlem.
Nice.
The Bronx, I was in the Bronx, and when I got out of school, I started theater on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx with my friend Marco Greco and Dante Alberti. So
somebody had told, I don't know if this is true, I thought I'd ask you, but somebody told me that back in the 80s, you had directed in the Bronx in a small theater, Italian-American Reconciliation.
Shanley's
Did you do
play.
that?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow.
And I heard that you interviewed Shanley recently.
I did. I actually did that play too. I did it in New York. But the only way I knew that, because Lori, her name is Lori
Triolo.
Yeah, she was in that production that you directed, and she played Aunt May in mine, and she told me that. I just thought that was fascinating that happened.
In fact, when that happened, I remember somehow somebody got Shanley's address, and so I wrote him a letter, and I was like, "We're doing this in the Bronx. You're from the Bronx, like."
Oh, you didn't know him?
No, I didn't know him. No. And I was like, your work's been so important to me. If there's any way you want it, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote him a letter, and then he agreed to come. So he came to the show, but I was so nervous because it's fucking John Patrick Shanley. It's like, I didn't say hello to him. Afterwards, he went backstage, hanging out, drinking with the cast. I didn't go backstage. I was like, I didn't do a good enough job. I was like, so I didn't meet him until like a couple of years later.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, how did playwriting starting for you, or was it acting first? Because I know obviously you act as well and direct and create shows and all that sort of stuff. What avenue started first for you, and how did that kind of come about?
Well, I started as an actor, and it's always been what I sort of love to do the most. And when I got involved with Labyrinth Theater Company in New York City, at the time it was just a gym for actors. And we meet one night a week from like 7 to 11, and we just do like bonding exercises and monologues and this and that, and then go out to the bars and get wasted, but we did that for like 2 or 3 years. So we developed this really tight bond, and at some point we decided, why don't we produce theater. But no one knew who we were, despite the fact that even back then, Sam Rockwell was in the company, Daphne Rubin Vega went on to star in Rent, and Phil hadn't quite joined yet, but Hoffman. But what would happen was we decided. So say you had a play, right? And I was like, oh, my friend Mershad has a great play. We could do it. But then you'd be like, well, I don't know if I want to do it with your company, because no one knew who we were.
Right.
Or maybe we had the play, so we're looking for a director, and the director's like, I don't know if I can cast it inside the company, you know? So pretty quickly we decided, let's just do our own thing. And John Ortiz, who was one of the founders of the company, we did an evening of one acts, and he said, why don't you write something? And I was like, I'm not a writer. But we went to college together, and I guess I wrote him a paper once in exchange for a pair of sneakers, I remember. And, and then we took a playwriting class, too, as an elective, and he's like, I think you can write. So it was an evening of short plays, and I guess my piece went over really well. And then basically all my friends just forced me to start writing and to keep writing. So I became a writer by being forced. By peer pressure, but then to create product for us to do our thing, you know, it was we were very close. So, you know, it was like, that's how it started, you know. And what I found that was artistic or that was satisfying was, you know, are you an actor?
I am.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing about acting is like, you could do all the training in the world, but until someone hires you, you can't act. But what I found is that when you're writing, you can play all the characters, you know, on the page, and B, you can take all the stuff that's going on inside of you that you don't quite know where to put, you know, either like you can't tell your friends or you know, like, you know, you go through a breakup and you're really devastated. So for like a couple of weeks, everyone's like got your back, but after a while, they're like, "Oh, Steven's coming," you know, and all those, you know, feelings you can put into a play and just disguise the, you know, the characters. And so that's kind of how it started. And then eventually it was sort of like, all right, I guess this is what I do.
And what was the out of all of the plays that you had, which one was the first one to be published or to get any sort of major notoriety, to like jumpstart your kind of writing career?
Right. Well, you know, I was just telling someone the other day, the first review that I ever got, we did this play called Boom, 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 Boom. And I remember going to Barnes & Noble to buy, it was this in-theater magazine, and I was like, I didn't even read it, I bought it first. And I went outside, I'm looking for the review, I find the review. And I was also acting in the play too, you know? And the first line of the review said, to be fair, some writers shouldn't act. ... or write! Exclamation point. And then the rest was just like this crazy pan. But no, the play after that was a play called In Arabia We'd All Be Kings. And it wasn't, it was the first play we had that, like, you know, extended a few times. We had to go to a mini contract. I don't remember about reviews, but that sort of set the tone. And then really the next play was Jesus Hopped the A Train. Amazing. And that was, you know, we started out in a 70-seat theater, and then we moved to off-Broadway, and then we did it in Rikers Island for prisoners, and then we went to Edinburgh, and then we went to London, and then we went to the West End of London. Actually, Madonna came and saw it when it was at the Donmar in London, and she put in the money to bring us to the West End.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
No, I mean, it was, you know, I met her for like 2 seconds. It wasn't like any kind of, she wasn't hanging out with us, but yeah, no one can say anything bad about Madonna to me.
Incredible.
I always come back with
I love that play. I actually, I saw it recently, the most recent time at the Signature. And I know that play pretty well. I've worked on it in class for years. It's one of my favorite plays of yours. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful play.
Thanks.
And even as much as I had worked on it I always worked on the angel character, but I didn't realize until the time that I saw it at the Signature, my perspective on it kind of changed, in which I thought, this play is more about Lucius in a way. There was something about the Lucius character that was so much bigger than I got out of just reading it and working on it. And then when I saw it, I was like, wow, Lucius. And the actor that played Lucius was, oh my God.
Yeah,
I forget his. I wish I remembered it. He was phenomenal, and I rushed outside to go meet him because I had to tell him how incredible he was, and he was so like. He had I went out as soon as the curtain went up and waited for him, and he was already rushing. He had his bag on, hat on, and he was trying to leave because he was just like trying to get out of it. But I caught him, and I made sure I told him. I was like, "Man, you were just absolutely incredible." Yeah, but that was.
And he came in like in the kind of at the last minute because we had I just rode my bike. I can't remember anybody's name, but
yeah.
we had an amazing actor, like a dream come true actor that I just respected for years. And he had a few rehearsals. Then he was sick. Then they said, "Oh, we think he has the flu. We think he has pneumonia." And it turned out he had cancer, and he passed. And he was such a great, yeah, dude. So that guy came in at the last minute, and then the guy who played Angel, he dropped out like in previews. So my friend Sean Carvajal, who's a great actor in his own right, came in.
Very good.
You know, so those two, both of them were some last minute motherfuckers, but
they were incredible.
They did a great
job.
Really,
really amazing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing that. I just saw right before I came. I just saw Between Riverside and Crazy.
Oh wow.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It was really Stephen
McKinley Henderson.
Oh my God. Every line, people were howling of laughter. I had never seen such a thing where somebody could literally make somebody laugh. Every single line, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
The cast was fantastic. The scene where the church lady comes, just killed. I mean, it was really, really. I had never seen the play before. That was my first time. I had read the play before in school coming up, but I thought it was wonderful. Is that did they close?
Yeah, we closed on Sunday.
Nice. And how involved are you in so is that somebody else that's coming? And I just never knew when somebody does your play on Broadway, are you always involved, or a producer come and say, "Hey, we're just going to get the rights and go do your thing," or how?
No, you're involved.
You're involved. Okay.
Yeah, with everything. It was a little bit of a difficult situation because we were scheduled to have did it like a year before.
Okay.
And all the actors were committed, and then they switched the slots, and so it put there was a lot of turmoil, and I was shooting this Winning Time, this HBO show, so I wasn't able to be there as much as I wanted to be, but yeah, all the casting, rehearsing, and yeah, as much as I could, even when we were like rehearsing on Zoom, I'm like on Zoom, and so yeah, of course, yes, you're involved. Yeah,
Zoom's been a big thing. And at what point did you say, okay, now I have to continue writing plays? Is that something that ever crossed your mind? Because when you deliver really good plays, I guess people are kind of expecting it of you. Is there, do you have is there, I don't know, like a publishing company that's expecting you to put something out or anything like that? How does that work?
Yes. I mean, I think that people are expecting me to keep writing plays in the same way that you would about anyone. But really, what it was for me was, like I said, it was really because of my company. And everything that I've done with Labyrinth, it always gets done. And it's usually pretty good. It's only when I take other jobs that I sometimes mess them up or don't give it my all because I don't like writing. I mean, I know that sounds like wah, but it's hard, and for me, I'm not extremely disciplined person, and my writing process has been pretty unhealthy. But the reason that I kept writing, and I don't mean to sound this like I guess I became aware that I had some talent for writing. And I was also aware that I didn't really do anything to get that talent. I didn't study writing. I didn't get an MFA. I barely got out of college. I barely got out of high school. And so I felt like as long as I have that ability, then I have an obligation until I suck to try to keep writing and to write about stuff that means something to me and hopefully means something to other people as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to live to.
Do you ever look back on some of your stuff and say, man, how did I write? Some of the stuff you write is just absolutely incredible. Do you ever just look back on it and be like, how did I write that? Is that ever a thought of it or no?
I kind of, but I Bob Dylan, they asked Bob Dylan, about that, and you know, in his
I
first,
saw that interview. That's why I'm
you know,
bringing it up.
and Bob Dylan's a genius. You know, Tony Kushner's a genius. Tennessee Williams is a genius. I don't think I'm a genius, um, but um, but what I would say is that sometimes when you're in the flow, yeah, you know, like any one of my plays, there's going to be whole sections that were basically untouched from the first time they came out,
Hmm.
and then other sections that are like heavily,
Hmm.
you know, yeah. So I try to. I think that writing is a collaboration between the person writing and something in the universe,
Yeah.
you know? So I try to align myself with whatever that spirit is. And and then when the light goes on, when the door opens, I try to run through the door as long as I can.
Hmm.
But yeah, you know, there's times where been writing for like, you know, 12 hours, 15 hours, and you have to go to bed. And so I'm like, all right, I got to go to bed. And you lie down, and then the characters are still talking, and you're like, all right, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to, and then you're like, no, I better go and write it down.
Yeah, before you forget it or
So
something.
I think it's a combination. There's inspiration. Picasso said that inspiration exists, but it must find you working. And that's the thing. And the process to get me working is that's the most painful part, at least for me.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Do you, when you're writing, I think I asked John the same question, but I'm always intrigued with people who can write like you. Do you does that night and let's say let's pick something, motherfucker with a hat. Does that start from a character? Does it start from an overall general idea? Does it start from a setting? And then how does a story like that come about, like inform? And does it go from the inside out, from the outside in?
I think inside out. I think that when you work in, certainly when you work in television and film, you work from an outline,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You have some freedom to, you know, color outside the lines, but you're working from an outline, and that's the correct way to do it. Writing, I don't. I write from, it starts from something that I'm feeling,
Hmm.
you know, something that I'm grappling with,
Hmm.
and then it'll take the form of dialogue. I had a play, Our Lady of 121st Street,
Hmm.
and I think the first line of the play is, "What kind of fucking world is this?" And that's how I was feeling. You know, motherfucker with the hat. Labyrinth was having their Labyrinth was
Hmm.
having their our summer retreat,
Hmm.
and so there's always an expectation I'm going to bring something. I didn't have anything, and so I just started to write. I guess what turned out to be the first scene, and I went up there with about 15 or 20 pages, like maybe like the beginning of the play. You know, where did it come from? It came from what was going on in my life at the time. You know, roughly. You
Hmm.
know, and this idea of, I had been in a relationship with someone who's a great person, and I still know, and I have love for, but it caused a lot of havoc.
Hmm.
You know, she had been involved with a dear friend of mine before me. I had no idea. I had no idea, and then
Before
we're
you started the
involved, and then she
relationship.
told me,
Uh,
you know, and then we broke up, and she started dating another extremely close, you know, so it caused a lot of havoc, and I was just going through that, and also observing just the thing about, you know, fidelity or infidelity, and how people behave, and the difference between when we're kids. You know, when we're kids, we really need our boys, you
hmm.
know, so there's a code, you
Hmm.
know, there's a code. This is what you do, this is what you don't do.
For sure.
But then when we get older,
Yeah.
those lines start,
Yeah.
you know,
They
to
start to
blur. So it
blur.
started from there, and everybody seemed to really love it, but I was like, I can't write another play where everybody's cursing and no one has a job and everyone's stressed. But then I was like, all right, one more, one
Yeah.
more, and
Yeah.
it grew from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
grew
that.
from there. I find that it starts with what I'm feeling, and if it can find its way into dialogue,
Hmm.
and then I let the voices speak, and then look and see if there's something there, and then take it from there. So I guess in that play, that first scene is sort of, they're having a big fight,
Hmm.
right? And there's all this stuff. And then I guess that when that scene, was over, at some point I must have thought like, all right, well, he mentions his sponsor, so well, I'm gonna. What would the sponsor be like?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
it started from there. It grows
That's
from there.
interesting. I have a funny story about Motherfucker with a Hat. My friend was working on it in class. My teacher Larry Moss loves your work and assigns it to us all the time, all the time. I worked on Jesus with him, and then my friend, he's an actor in Toronto. I'm Canadian also, but he lives in Toronto, and he was doing a scene from it in class, and they were doing the Ralph Jackie scene, where they get into a big fight. And at some point, they had choreographed, I guess, a chair throw. And his scene partner threw a chair, and my friend Franco didn't see the light on the stage was so bright, and it was a steel chair, and hit him right in the forehead and split his head open.
Ooh,
And they continued to do the scene.
right.
And we didn't realize that it was because somebody had gone up before and they used a blood packet thing. And so we thought, oh, these people are also doing it, whatever. But it was real. And after the scene was done, Larry was like, is that real blood on your head? And he was like, yeah. So they had to rush him to the hospital. He has this permanent scar on his forehead.
That's crazy.
I was like, I'm going to tell Stephen that.
Bobby got a few concussions.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from the fight, but I think he banged his head on something one time from the fight, but he never missed a show.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How did your so speaking of Labyrinth? I was actually I was there for a reading. There was a private reading of a thing. Are you still involved in Labyrinth?
Yeah. What was the reading?
It was my friend Matt's friend. His name's Justin.
Justin Ronsilber.
Yes.
The Barn series. Yeah.
The Barn series. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went and saw the Barn series. It was a one act. It was really, really great. The actors were
cool.
awesome. It was my first time actually going to something like that. But yeah, I went and saw that. It was really, really cool. They're doing well and they're kicking, it seems like. And
we're hanging in. Yeah. I mean, we lost. We went through a reshuffling. We lost our space. We lost our funding. But we didn't lose.
Hope.
Our hope, heart, spirit, and love. So
yeah, it's always good. It's always good to see a lot of the actors. I also saw what was the last play?
Victor?
Go to Heaven. The last play you did.
Oh, Halfway Bitches.
Halfway Bitches.
Heaven.
Yeah. I saw that. That was through Labyrinth as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a collaboration between Labyrinth and the Atlantic Theater.
Nice.
Yeah, Neil Pepe. In fact, the first production of Riverside that you saw the other day was again Neil Pepe. Yeah, he's been really good to us, good to me.
Nice. Well, and speaking about Labyrinth, I know that it's February, and we just passed the anniversary of the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Just want to talk a little bit, if you would, about how you guys met, your friendship. I know he directed many of your plays, and how did that the friendship and then also the work collaboration start and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, Phil came into Lab because John Ortiz did a play with Peter Sellers, the director, and he directs operas and he did it like a world tour of Merchant of Venice, and Phil was in the production. And so when John came back, he brought a couple of people. He brought Phil and this kid Joe Quintero and this wonderful actress named Portia, and they all came into the company. So me and Phil met, and we became like friends, And then I wrote a play about an Irish construction worker, and he ended up playing the part. And somewhere in there, so he was like the lead actor, and I was a playwright, and so we did a lot of, communicating together about stuff. And I think we both realized that we had a lot of things in common and a lot of our ideas about how things should be, And so then, I don't know, a year or two later, he's now one of the artistic directors, and they had a play of mine that they were doing. It was in Arabia, We'd All Be Kings. And he said, well, who do you want to direct it? And I was like, how about you? And he was like, oh, Steve, I've never directed a play before. And I was like, yeah, but I never wrote a play before a couple of years. But I knew even then that I could write anything and that he would understand it intellectually and emotionally, and that he would be able to communicate that to actors in a way that would activate them, challenge them, embolden them. And that's sort of how it started. And we did, I I think six more plays after that together. And that's how it started. And it was amazing, amazing, but I gotta say, and I always say this, it's not like a new idea, but everybody knows that Phil was a fucking great actor, and really like a great artist. But he was even better a person.
No.
I mean, he, 15 years when he was clean and sober, he was just a great person. I mean, he's a guy who would show up for everybody.
Yeah.
He would show up for his play. He'd show up for my play. He'd show up for like the worst person in the world's play.
Yeah.
He would show up, and he was good. And it wasn't until he started using again that things went south, and they went south pretty quick, and it's horrible. But just a great guy, and he the Riverside was it River? No, Motherfucker was the first one that he didn't direct, and I remember I want him to play the sponsor.
Okay.
Like that was to me like the ideal. Like we did a reading of the sponsor, and it was, I was like, you could play the sponsor, or you could direct it, or you could do both. And he didn't want to do either. And he was like, I think we should just like do friend things, like spend more time as friends, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm down for the friends.
Yeah.
But like you've directed all my plays when there's like huge casts, the plays being written in rehearsal. You've done we've done all this work together where it was so unmanageable. But here's a play that's basically already written. It only has 5 characters. We're gonna do it on Broadway. So why don't we do this and kick ass and then go camping, or whatever. But he was adamant. And I think in retrospect that the play probably hit a little too close to home. But he also did me a great service, because when you work with somebody and work that intimately with somebody who's like so fucking smart, and so committed and so passionate, it doesn't, no matter how good I was, there was always a part of me that felt like, well, if it wasn't with Phil, it wouldn't work, or, it's just, I can just write good dialogue by Phil. And he gave me the opportunity to do a play with somebody that I had never met before, where the stakes were humongous, and come through it and realize like, yeah, no, I'm legit in my own right, but yeah, we all are touched by his loss almost daily.
Yeah.
Almost daily. Yeah. Still. And it's been fucking forever.
Yeah.
And now, like, the ones, when I talk to anybody that didn't know him and didn't know him well, I just want to say all the good things, because it's true. But like in the little inner circle, we deal with the grief by like just making fun of him and blasting him and being like, his ego, this, remember this, remember that. But yeah, he's a great guy, and it's just life, It's like life is.
I can see how much he actually affected, how much.
Yeah. He was. I would say for 15 years, he was probably the only person that I would listen to.
Wow.
And was always the first person I would turn to. And it could be like not about even work. Sometimes it's about work, but it was just about like anything, and yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I ran into Robert Falls at the Lincoln Center Library just by luck. And I was studying Long Day's Journey into Night. I was working on it in class, and I just so happened to run into the guy at the Lincoln Center Library who directed it.
Wow.
With Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he saw the play in my hand. And he was like, "Oh, are you watching? Are you because you can go and watch the plays on the screens there."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, are you watching Long Days?" I'm like, "Yeah." I don't know who he was. It was just some guy standing there, and he was like, "Oh, cool. Which version?" I was like, "Oh, the Philip Seymour Hoffman version." He's like, "Oh, cool. I directed that." I was like, "What?" And it was just this incredible moment. And he was really sweet, and he spoke to me for a few minutes afterwards, and I asked him about Phil and all that sort of stuff because I always thought he was just a fantastic actor, and as much as the stuff that he did on film is incredible, the stuff he did on stage is just like
Man, that stage.
Long Day's Journey into Night, Act 4 with him is just. I mean, it was so incredible that I was sitting in. I didn't see it live. I saw it in that chair, but it brought up so much in me just sitting in a chair watching it in a on a screen that I was just like, wow, imagine seeing this thing live.
I did. I saw it a few times, and I mean, and he was on stage with people who were like no slouches, but
I
mean, he.
How was he after a show after would you hang out? Would he go out and hang out like after a show like that? Or
Yeah. I mean, he was extremely sensitive, as as we all are. But a lot of times, this was one of the lessons that I've learned is that when somebody's really great, you just assume that they know it.
Yeah.
And they don't need you. Sometimes you'll see someone you really admire and you want to go up to oh, I don't want to bother them. But my mother taught me years ago, she was like, never be afraid to give someone a compliment if it's sincere.
Yeah.
Because you never know when they're going to need to hear it.
Yeah.
And Phil, as much as Phil could be full of bombast and blah, 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 he'd be like, he'd be doing that show or something else. And he'd call me and he'd be like, hey, I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, Max came to the show last night. Right? I was like, I don't know, I heard. He's like, he didn't go backstage. He didn't say for anyone. What? He didn't like it? Blah, blah, blah. Like, he was so sensitive.
Wow.
So sensitive about shit. Yeah, but if he was with his friends, he could go out. He could release. But
that's kind of nice to hear as an actor.
It's true, man. It's so true. It's not just him. Really, often the bigger they are, the more they
need it.
The more that they need it. But the thing that was actually more striking than that to me was that anytime he was doing a play or even or a movie, but often a lot with the plays, we'd be on the phone because I'd be up late writing and he'd get home from the show and and he would call and he'd be like, I suck. Wow. I want to quit acting. I want to go teach English in France. Like he was so hard on himself.
Yeah.
And I used to say to him, like, bro, as your friend, I feel horrible that you're going through this. I was like, but as a person that would be paying $150 to go see a play, I want the actor that's up at night kicking himself, trying to figure out how to get better.
Yes.
And it's a balancing act, right? Yeah. Because we can't do this to be misogynists, you know. But Phil used to say it. I said it should cost you something to do what you do.
Yeah, I heard you said that. A good work costs you something.
It should, It doesn't mean in an unhealthy way, but you should be exhausted when you get off that stage. If it's if you've done your job, you should because and you should give everything that you have. And so that was just another example, because I'm sure you've had this experience. I'm sure this gentleman's had this experience where you go see somebody, whatever, if it's in a play or something, and they fucking sucked. Yeah. And then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to say to them? Yes. And then afterwards, they're like, hey, how's it going? Hey, let's go get a drink. And you're just like, how are you even showing your face,
Yeah, you would rather the opposite. Somebody be incredible and not know if they were doing a good job. Yeah, amazing.
That happened. I got to meet Robin Williams when he did the Bengal Tiger, and Rajiv, who was a playwright.
I just did Gruesome Playground Injuries a couple months ago, and Rajiv came to the show. And I met him.
He's a sweetheart.
He's
a great writer too.
Great writer.
But he took me, and I met. I was just. Who doesn't? Yeah. Robin Williams. He didn't want to hear a single word of praise. all he wanted to talk about, he had seen Motherfucker with the Hat. He's oh, motherfucker, oh, that play. But he was so humble,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I was. My friend Hurach was in that. He played Uday Hussein.
Oh man, he was great.
Yeah, so I was.
Great.
I did a TV show with him many years ago, and it's funny because I was in class I used to live here in LA. I used to go to the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and my teacher there said you should get this play called Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo. And I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" He's like, "Oh, it's about the Iraq War." And my family lived through it because I lived in Kuwait and Iraq invaded, and we had to get out of there.
Yeah.
So I know a lot about the war and all that kind of stuff. So that's how I kind of, and then like weeks later, I book a part on the TV show, and this Hurach guy is on. My scene is with him, and then he's talking to me about how he was on Broadway with Robin Williams. And I was like, oh, what'd you do? He's like, oh, this Bengal. I was like, oh, my teacher just told me to do this thing. Uday Hussein. He's like, I played Uday Hussein. I was like, man, it's just weird how sometimes some of this stuff. But yeah, no, Rajiv is amazing. Those plays are his plays are wonderful, and I got to briefly meet him. He was very sweet. We had no idea he was coming to the show, but I think our director invited him, and then he was nice enough to come and stop by.
He's a sweet dude.
I read somewhere or heard somewhere that you are doing an adaptation of one of my favorite films of all time. Is it still happening? Dog Day Afternoon?
Yeah. For Broadway.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been they gave me the job like 6.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been in the works for a long time, and they
give you that much time.
Well,
or you're just like, I need it.
They won't fire me. I mean, I don't know. Like I got the job when I was doing the Get Down, so they knew it would take a while, and for whatever reason they're waiting, and so it's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Oh,
yeah,
I can't wait for that. That's gonna be
we did a reading at Ojai in the summer, and it's coming along. Yeah, and hopefully it'll be. If not, hopefully it'll be next season.
Wow.
I mean,
do you know who's going to play the do you guys know?
I don't know. Although, when I first had the meeting, I was like, this would be a great part for Bobby Cannavale.
It was at the tip of my tongue. I was like, can you please get Bobby to do it?
But they were like, yes, but the younger version. Like they wanted somebody like in their late 20s or 30s. So I was like, okay. And then I would do readings every once in a while and have people read. And then one time I called Bobby and I was like, hey, I told them already. I was like, yeah, they think you're too old, whatever. Yeah. I was like, but you want to do a reading just for fun?
Yeah.
So we did a Zoom reading, and afterwards the execs called me. They're like, Bobby was wonderful. Do you think he'll do it?
Of course he was wonderful.
So hopefully he'll do it. Although, John Bernthal did it in Ohio. He was tremendous also. And so I don't know how the cast is going to turn out, but my hope is that first to write it. That's what I say. Let me write it first. We cross that bridge. And then hopefully next season. But it's interesting adapting because there's elements of that film that really suit itself to be on the stage, and then there's other elements that are pretty challenging.
Yeah, the end is challenging, I would find, to be on stage.
The rest
helicopters,
of it,
all of that stuff is. But I think the majority of it is within the bank would be a pretty cool way to.
Yeah, you just have to. I think in the movie, like even everybody remembers, Cazale, obviously, brilliant. But like if you watch the movie, he might have like 20 or 30 lines total.
Yeah.
But it's a movie. The all the hostages, they have little moments here and there, but it's in the background. But in a play, if you're going to put people on stage for 2 hours, they have to have more. So I'm working on all of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully
I hope that comes through. I do want to talk about some of the TV stuff. I did not even know about the Get Down until I started to do the research for coming here. I'm a huge hip hop fan. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And then I saw that this was done with Baz Luhrmann. How did you guys meet, and how did the concept, was it his idea, your idea? How did you guys come together to collaborate on, so the show, because people are going to be listening to this without even, the show is, it's basically a story about the evolution of music from, I guess,
like the birth of hip hop in
the Bronx, in the 70s.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how did you get involved in that project?
Well, I think Baz had wanted to do a show about the birth of hip hop, right? Cool. But I didn't, know Baz. I had nothing to do with him. And but then I got an email one day, and it said from Baz Luhrmann. I was like, I thought it was like a joke or like junk mail or something.
Okay.
But I guess he saw a motherfucker with the hat, and he wanted to meet me, and then he told me, he's doing the show about the birth of hip hop, blah, blah, blah. And do you like it? I was like, yeah, of course I like hip hop. And I was like, could it be a coming of age story? Yes, I love that idea, blah, blah, blah. So that's how it happened. So I sort of signed on to kind of co-create and help him bring it into existence. So, but it wasn't my idea. In fact, I didn't want to do TV. In fact, I'd received some award that came with money, and I was like, all right, I'm not doing it anymore. Fuck TV, fuck all this shit. I'm just going to write plays and, work with young kids, and that's it. But then, when Baz Luhrmann calls, and it's, so that's how it started. That's
Amazing.
how it started.
How does somebody like you, how does acting work for somebody like you? Do you, are you still auditioning?
Yeah,
or really?
I'm trying to get auditions.
Really?
Yes, I'm represented by WME, and I wish I got a few more fucking auditions.
Can we please get this man some more auditions?
Could the season regular on the HBO show get a fucking audition?
Yes, please. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? It's everybody.
I always thought you're just people just offering, and you're just like, no, I don't.
No. I mean, I think that now it's more likely people when I have an audition, it's because people already sort of know me. In fact, the writing helped in that way. I went from like some unknown, hard to type person to someone that some people knew. But the Winning Time was just a straight offer. But Adam's last film, or the one before that, I auditioned for and got a part, and then he just cast me in this. So that's how that happened. But no, I audition, of course. Yeah, I audition. It's very elite company where you no longer audition. Even big actors often will have to audition. And occasionally get an offer. And but. Yeah, I audition because I want to do it.
You
I
like acting.
It's what.
So you like acting more than writing?
Well, because acting, I can wake up in the morning and be like depressed and like I don't want to live. I don't want to leave the house, but I got rehearsal at 10.
Yeah.
Right. So like 9, even if it's like 9:30, I don't take a shower, I don't brush my teeth. I get there at 10:01. I'm still in a bad mood. But now like, hey, he's here, you're there. Someone says, hey, blah blah blah. Someone makes a joke, and then you're working together, and then all of a sudden, a few hours go by, and I feel back to myself. Yeah. With writing, I can wake up in that same state, and there's no one to redirect my energy. So I like that. And also it's, both are difficult to do well, but acting, it's like a sport. I like sports too, although I don't look very sporty anymore, but like, it's, you do it. Yeah. If you're doing a play, you're terrified and you go through the process and you get off stage and, acting is always where I feel most okay in my body, okay in my skin, and maybe it's because I'm being someone else, maybe it's not, but I enjoy it.
Did you train acting growing up?
Yeah, I did. I studied with William Esper. Yeah. What happened with that was I joined Labyrinth, and I was so intimidated because like everybody was like cooler than me, better looking than me, better actor than me, but I noticed that all like the best, like Sam Rockwell and a few others, they had all mentioned this guy Bill. Oh, Bill said, oh, Bill. I'm like, so I was like, man, if I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna have to find out who this fucking Bill guy is. So I went and took his summer intensive, and I ended up studying him for
who's Bill?
Bill Esper, William Esper.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how I started studying there. And then from there, I met Daphne Rubin Vega, who I brought in, became a member of our company, and this other guy, Salvatore Inzerillo, who was in Jesus Up the A Train and Judas and in Arabia, and yeah. But yes, that's and it was the first time studying with Bill was the first time that I was in any kind of an academic setting where I truly was inspired and truly wanted to do the best that I possibly could. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I have a few just questions that I've always wanted to ask you. Like, who's your favorite playwright of all time?
Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee Williams.
Definitely.
And what is your favorite play of all time?
Favorite play?
Is it from Tennessee or
I mean,
it could not be?
yeah. I mean, the play that it's hard to say. I mean,
you can pick more than one.
Well, the play that affected me, that I really remember being affected, when I was like 15, we went to England, and I saw a production of All My Sons by Arthur Miller, and that really changed me.
That might be my favorite play of all time.
Yeah, I love this play. It's not the greatest, but when I got to see Malkovich in Burn This, and that I was on a break from school. I saw that play. I went back to Albany and changed my major to theater.
Wow.
And the other one, which was, again, combination, I don't know if it's like favorite, but my friend worked at a theater, and he's like, I have extra tickets for this show. Do you want to go? I was like, I didn't even want to go. I was like, what is it? Like, So showed up, and it was This Is Our Youth with Kenny Lonergan. And with fucking Mark Ruffalo.
Wow.
And Mark Ruffalo's performance blew me away, and Kenny's play blew me away. And the thing that really blew me away about Kenny's play was Kenny grew up I think he's a few years older than me, but he grew up in my neighborhood. And my neighborhood was wealthier than my family was. So I grew up with a lot of like resentment and jealousy and anger towards a lot of those kids because they all had more money than me. You know, they had better pot than me. Like they had better girls. Like they wouldn't invite when you know you're a teenager and you like everyone come over and we're gonna play like spin the bottle, make out the color. I was not so I had a lot of resentment against those kids, and I saw This Is Our Youth 20 years after I'm no longer a kid. And it was about those kids because he was one of those kids, and I was able to understand and have empathy for rich kids that I didn't have, and that really was amazing. And then when we did Jesus in London, they were doing This Is Our Youth in London, and it was different cast. It was Jake Gyllenhaal and who's that amazing actress who won the Oscar when she was like 8?
Natalie Portman?
Not Natalie Portman. She was also in the TV show for a long time about the vampire on HBO.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, fuck. I can't remember her name.
I can't remember.
It'll come to me. But anyway, they were in it. But because we were friends with the producer, they let me go see it for free. I saw that play like 8 times because I was so amazed at his ability to sustain dialogue. So, yeah, those are some. I remember seeing Angels in America and that.
Which one did you see?
The one with Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, wow.
I remember seeing, and Jeffrey Wright was like a kid then. And then I saw him on Amsterdam Avenue a couple of days later. I remember, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, hey man, I'm sorry to blah, 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 blah. And I remember, like, this is how long ago it was. Like, he was like, genuinely, there was no blase. He was like, oh, thank you so much,
That's always nice.
There's nothing better to me. I mean, a great music show, a great sport, but when the theater is at its best, there's nothing better. I mean, first time I saw Long Day's Journey, it was opening, and then there was a party afterwards. It was like, of course I went to the party, but I didn't want to go to the party. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I wanted, like, I like walked around the block like 4 or 5 times because it sits in you, you know?
There is something about a good show that you want it to linger as long as possible.
Yeah.
It's a good show, and after you want to go and talk about the show. You have to go somewhere and talk to somebody about or whoever you're with. Yeah. Like, let's go eat something and let's just talk about what just happened on that stage because it was amazing.
Yeah. Actually, like my first thing is like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And then I want to talk. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, last question I have for you.
Yes, sir.
If you had the opportunity to create any kind of work, and you were bound by nothingness. The budget was unlimited. You could have anybody in it. It could be a play. It could be a film. It could be a movie.
Right.
Anything. What do you think you would do? You think you would do a play? Do you think you would do a film? And who would you want? Who would you want to be a part of it? And what kind of story would you want to tell?
That's an open-ended question.
Has there ever been any maybe? Has there ever been a project you've always wanted to do but never really got the chance to do it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I kind of exist in a way of thinking that always thinks like I may never be able to do it again. So like I may never be able to do a play again. Who knows? You know, certainly Broadway's not something that happens all the time. So if it could only be one thing, it would probably be another play. But no, my sister thinks I should direct a movie, and that maybe there's a world one day. Like at one point I was writing a screenplay that was like sort of like the prequel to Jesus Hopped the A Train. Like what happened, like that play was based on experiences I had of a friend joining a cult, and me and his brother and his father and a couple other people trying to kidnap him and deprogram him.
Right.
That story is interesting to me.
Just writing how the kid got into the cult.
Yeah, the play became fictional. You know, I mean, I was a bike messenger. I didn't stab Sung Young Moon or shoot him in the ass. You know, I didn't meet a guy on death row. But sort of what I learned in the process, because when it was happening, you know, I spent a good amount of time and energy like dedicated to this cause of like, we got to get Joey back. You know, we got to, you know, and then eventually I went to therapy. And when I went to therapy, what I learned was like, yeah, did I love Joey? Yes. Did I think that the Unification Church is bullshit? Yes. You know, but really Joey was like my friend from childhood. And so letting him go was like letting my childhood go. And if I let my childhood go, then what does that mean? What am I left with? Adulthood. And I don't want to be an adult, you know? And so it took a while to get to that place, but that's sort of what it was, what it was about at the time. So yeah, anyway, to answer your question, oh, I know the answer to this question.
Okay.
You know, I'm an amateur, very amateur, guitar music, you know, guy. And so I guess if I could, I would like to be able to do what I do now for longer and hopefully be productive and be helpful to others. But I would love to someday do a show where either I write the songs or it's a combination of songs I've written and other songs, and sort of I like to perform music
Oh, nice.
in front of other people someday. In fact, what I say is like you know when you go to like Florida or something and you go to those bars and there's like the guy in the Hawaiian shirt that plays like cover songs of the Eagles.
Yeah.
It's like I want to be that guy. Like it's not my final aspiration, but like if I could start there, have enough aptitude that I could do that, I'd be really happy. And there's probably still enough time. There will never be enough time for me to be a great musician, but there's enough time to be competent. And I enjoy it in the same way that I enjoy acting. And I'm not going to be a baseball player. That's not going to happen. You know, there's certain things that won't, but that could still. So I'd like to do that. And I will invite you. The other thing I'd like to do, that's why we should take numbers, is that is also I would like to invest a little bit in our Arab American community. For years I've had an idea for a play called The Egyptians Are Coming. The Egyptians Are Coming, based on growing up. Well, you know, I don't know about how it was in your house, but like anytime there was an Egyptian in the tri-state area, they had to come to my house. They had to stay at my house. I can't tell you how many nights I spent sleeping with like, you know, twin beds, and I'd be sleeping and there'd be some usually overweight, hairy guy who smelled like Johnny Walker Black, um, uh, what do men wear now? Aftershave
Yeah.
and cigarettes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I feel that I don't know how you feel, but I feel like popular culture helps Americans understand groups that are different than them,
Mhm.
and it's happened. You know, the Jeffersons, Sanford and the Sons, Good Times. They were all comedies, but they helped people understand what a black community was like, or Chico and the Man, this and that. I feel like the Arab Americans is still people don't really understand,
It's true.
and when I say they don't understand, what I mean to say is nobody has shown in the same way that Neil Simon showed the world this is what Jewish family, and it's the same as your family. People have not really yet understood that that it's the same. There's
Yeah.
so much similar.
For sure.
And yeah, I mean, I don't experience prejudice, but I still hear a lot of ignorant shit.
Yeah.
And I want people to see like, no, we got the funny uncle too.
For sure. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Bro, thank you.
It was incredible. Thank you for doing this. I've been a huge fan from afar for a very, very long time. I appreciate all the work you've done. It's been a pleasure working on all of your plays all these years and finally getting to meet you. So thank you
man.
so much,
My
man.
pleasure. My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.